It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. It's Feedback Friday. And again, apologies if I'm lisping a little, still got the Invisalign. Finally starting to settle, got dental wax, so it's not cutting my tongue every time it moves now. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to get into this video. It sort of is like, oh, do I do some of the Doctor Who stuff? I want to get to the mental health stuff, and then maybe if there's time, get to the Doctor Who stuff, because let's face it, it's more important. So there's a couple of comments, and I'm still going, oh, which one do I start with? Maybe the statement first, question second. So if you like this content, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K. You know, these services do go towards helping men's mental health. So the comment with the men's mental health video was, I'm glad you've talked about this. Men are socialized to practice self-restraint at all costs, even to the point of suppressing things like our emotions or sexuality, because we've been taught to believe we're inherently predatory. It's unfortunate because self-restraint is still an important virtue for people to practice. It's just we've gone overboard with it. We're only taught to understand self-restraint as a cage, something to be closed and locked, to hide away the fear, sadness, and shame, and to forget them. As you said, to protect the world from myself. I hope we can start to teach men to understand self-restraint as more like the restraints of a yoke or harness, something you put on when the time calls for it, a tool to be used and removed when it's no longer needed, part of an ongoing process. We're never taught that self-restraint should happen on an as-needed basis, or that the things we're restraining aren't inherently shameful or dangerous. Men should be free to feel. That was really, really poignantly put. One of the things I found helpful, because, you know, for the people who are going, well, women too, yeah, there are different self-restraint elements with men and women. I mean, obviously women have the keep your legs closed thing. And, you know, despite that lessening that is still very much there, that's where the whole benevolent sexism thing kicks in. But with men, it is that specific, as the commenter pointed out, that belief that men are inherently predatory. So self-restraint is protect the world from, you know, the man is protecting the world from himself. And that's not a healthy way to go about things. So two suggestions. One is just your interests, your likes, your feelings. They're not good, they're not bad, they're just is. They're just feedback, right? And this is when people, well, what if somebody's attracted to a kid? This isn't helpful. One, it just is. It's not good or bad. It just is. Identify and accept the feeling or the like or the preference before you start going, is this good? Is this bad? Is this something that, you know, I should explore deeper? You know, I was talking to a client this week, and I said that, you know, most people do not put a moral judgment on your favorite kind of ice cream, you know, except, you know, it's strange because I happen to like vanilla ice cream. I don't eat ice cream because it bothers my stomach, but back when I did, you know, a good vanilla ice cream, one of the best things in the world, right? Quality ingredients, all that stuff. And people would think that's weird because, you know, I could get Cherries Garcia with the cherries and the chocolate and all that stuff. And to me, that's just too many flavors. I want to enjoy something that I can kind of tease out and, you know, really taste what I'm tasting. And so I don't know why people like Cherries Garcia ice cream. A lot of Ben & Jerry's flavors just have too much shit in it for me. But these are not moral things. These are just preference. And it does benefit us to recognize when something is just different. It's not good or bad. So that's one. But also in terms of self-restraint, it's the I want to versus I need to, right? Everybody loses it sometimes, and learning how to be compassionate with ourselves when we do is important. But also the idea that, look, I'm going to not lash out and not name call and, practice self-restraint, because I will feel better about myself after the encounter than if I lose my shit and go, whole ham. That to me is a better mindset than I need to. I just need to keep it all pressed down. And there are a lot of guys walking around just feeling clenched. And, it isn't healthy and it isn't fair to them. And that we do sort of need, I really think that we need emotional education or something that just teaches skills like this before someone really needs them, or gives them the ability. I mean, part of the reason I do this content is to give people an opportunity to learn about this stuff and explore it without, passively, like at their own pace. And I do think that that's useful. It's much better to work on the self-acceptance angle than to just redirect blame. It's not my fault, it's the feminists and all that stuff. That really doesn't help, I find, in the long term. I mean, don't get me wrong, feminist thought has a lot of problems. Part of it's money. The stuff that works doesn't bring in the money because, well, it's unpopular. It's messed up. But, that doesn't mean that, well, it's not me, it's a feminist. That doesn't make your life any better. It doesn't make your life any happier. I started getting better when I recognized, yeah, some of it is me. But instead of thinking about that as a failing, it's okay, great, control what we can control. This is something I can control, so I can change it and be happier. That's a good thing, right? So bringing that perspective into a more centered kind of, I hate the term positive, but a thing that's motivating, a thought process that's motivating instead of just feeling caged, is very, very helpful, I found, because then it's not constantly fighting, rattling the bars of the cage. It's no, I'm doing this out of a conscious choice because, even if the interaction doesn't go well, I can look at it and went, you know what? I was fair and I treated them with decency, and they called me a whole bunch of names and couldn't stop even when I didn't respond in kind. And that makes it very easy to, recognize who was in control there, or who conducted themselves well and who didn't. And that really helps. As much as you think that sending that nasty message is flinging out that nasty name, throwing blame around, as much as you think that's going to make you feel better because you're standing up for yourself, you're not really standing up for yourself there. You're actually just giving people ammunition to use against you. Because, think about how something would look if that was shown to someone else. And some people go, I don't care, I had to speak my mind. All right, but be prepared to accept the consequences of that, right? If, and it's not therapy, I call it happy math. If blowing your stack is worth that person not wanting to talk to you, I mean, sometimes it is about, wanting to make the person go away. But just keep in mind, whenever you're having an exchange with someone, if someone screen caps something and put it online, would you be able to stand by what you said? And I say this as someone who's had people screen cap things, put them out of context and out of order online to try to make me look bad. And it didn't work, precisely because, I stand by what I say. And there are sometimes I was just pushed too far. I snapped. Yeah, I'll fully admit it. Here's the context to what was going on for like weeks before that, right? You have to be able to live with what you do. And that's the benefit of self-restraint. So great commenter. Now let's get to the second one. See how this one goes. So where is it? My 19-year-old grandson has some serious maturity and mental health issues. His father refused to admit there was a problem, but his high school got him into therapy, which seemed to be helping. Unfortunately, once he graduated, responsibility for keeping it going fell to him. He's not doing well, and if we try to suggest he gets help, he either flies into a rage or sulks in his room. How do we get him to help himself? I say all the time, listen to your kids, especially with 19-year-olds, because that is a tough age for men, because they're expected to be men, but they are still teenagers. The brain is still maturing. There's obviously, it could very much be that, and I don't know, there's very little detail in that comment, but if you want someone to go to therapy, nagging them to go to therapy is the worst possible thing you can do. Believe it or not. Listening to them and hearing what the issue is for them. Now, set boundaries in the conversation, right? Don't accept verbal abuse. Don't accept false blame. But he's 19 years old. He's still figuring out who he is. And he may be feeling unwanted by his family when the talk of therapy comes up. Therapy helped. Well, does he think therapy helped? If he thinks therapy helped, why'd he stop going? Right? That suggests he's pretty depressed if he can't get himself to something that was helping. Try to put it in a more empathetic lens than saying he's immature. He's 19 years old, right? Like, how much maturity can you really expect? And he sounds like he's a troubled 19-year-old. So instead of making it a moral failing, oh, you're immature, you need to go to therapy. I know when I was a teenager and I started therapy at 15. And it was a shit experience at first, because the therapist kept saying, well, this is in the home, but the home wasn't hearing it. And after I started seeing a counselor, every time I got into a fight with my mother, she'd say, and I remember the tone. The counselor's name was Marianne. So every time I started getting in her face, because I was, 15, 16 years old, she'd go, do you want to go see Marianne? She was using the fact that I was going to therapy to just, as a shutdown, I don't want to deal with you. And that does not give a teenager a great attitude towards therapy. They're being punished for seeking help because I wanted my mother to listen to me and understand me, because that was part of what I was hearing in therapy. Was there are certain things that parents are supposed to provide, and I was supposed to try to talk and solve problems, and I was caught between what the therapist was saying and my family thinking that therapy was going to fix me, instead of identifying things that needed to be fixed. A lot of times within the family, somebody that young, unless there's been some, major personality disorder diagnosis, and even then, those are often rooted in neglect. It's environmental. And so if you want your 19-year-old grandson to help himself, treat him like you want to help him and support him, not fix him. Because that's when the pride gets into it. And when people start getting the identity of being broken or being a burden, men and being a burden, that is an explosive combination, because it damages their sense of self, right? So sit down and listen to him and ask him, why doesn't he want to go? And really accept his answer. Don't try to talk him out of it. And then there are alternatives to therapy, like conventional one-on-one psychotherapy. There might be some mentoring programs that might work better for him. There might be some peer-to-peer stuff like I do in your area. There are other things other than conventional psychotherapy. Volunteering can give him a greater sense of self. He may be struggling with the identity of being the sick one or the broken one or the burdensome one. And that is going to get in the way of him being in the mind space to be able to make changes. Now, if one family member is struggling, the entire family needs to be prepared to do things differently, because something is not helping that young man thrive. And the comment beforehand about self-restraint, it sounds like this, 19-year-old guy is overdosing on self-restraint. He's trying to keep it in. And then somebody mentions therapy and he just blows, because he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders. And when you're there, when you're just sucking up stuff from everybody around you and just keeping it in, don't respond. And you're told you should go to therapy. What that reads as is you should do even more work. You should suffer more, even though you're the problem, even though the kid is completely overloaded as is. In order for him to do better, everyone's going to have to change what they do and say a little. And because he's got to feel like he's got some sense of control, that he's not going to be told, just go to therapy, because there's a difference between a mental illness and someone who is just unhappy and needs things to change. And I don't know what the mental illness in question is, but he graduated, so he kept up that. I don't know if he's at school or work now, but the most important thing is to talk to him and to let, and more importantly, listen. Talk to him, I think, is actually the wrong way of going about it, because that's you talking and him listening. Like I said right off the top, listening to him And, really listening. And when he speaks, say, okay, I want to make sure I'm understanding this. Can I repeat back to you what I understood you just say there? Right? And let him say yes or no. And I find that's an important step that intentional dialogue leaves out. A lot of people, they'll start with what I hear you saying is, and it'll annoy people because the context isn't there. You're just repeating back. You're just whatever. It's instead of going, look, I want to make sure I understand. So can I, tell you what I understood you're telling me? And this isn't the time to judge what he was saying, right? No, that's stupid. That's ridiculous. Listen to him, okay? Even if it stings, even if it feels unfair. Like, even as you're always on my back. Well, you may think you're on his back for his own good, but listen to him. Because, yeah, if he's telling you you're always on my back, then being on his back is not helping him. And you're going to get oppositional defiance if he's telling you basically back off, I need you to back off, and you're just go to therapy. If that's the one thing you want from him, and he's not getting his emotional needs met, he is going to dig in, and that's the one thing he's not going to do. So, this is what I understand you saying. Did I get that right? And give him the opportunity to say yes or no. Like, give him the opportunity to correct you. Because if he can correct you, then he's going to respond better when you're asking things of him. Because now you're on the same level. Instead of you putting yourself above and superior to him. Both morally and in that power structure he might be chafing against. And so once you've accurately been able to, repeat back to him what he's trying to tell you, validate his feelings. You don't have to agree with his assessment. Validate his feelings. Something like, well, if I was in your situation, that would feel pretty frustrating. Somebody always being on your back. Feeling like you can't win, feeling like you can't get anything right, or something like that. Like, how would you put yourself in his shoes? How would you feel in that moment? Really try to empathize. And what you might get then is, yes, that is exactly how I feel, or no, that's not how I feel. I feel this. And it's like, okay, you feel, okay, he's not frustrated, he's scared, say. If he admits fear to you, that's a big step, right? And then this is a step a lot of people skip. Communicate that you care that he's having that feeling, and do it in a way of support. So, like, okay, I care that you're frightened, or I care that you're frustrated. That wasn't my intention in stressing the importance of therapy, for instance, right? If he's made an accusation against you, especially if it's an accusation of intent, you can't push back on that gently. Like, no, that's not exactly what my memory of it was, but I want to focus on your feelings right now. The most important thing to me is that you're scared. What can we do about that? And the minute you seem to give a damn and you're willing to put in some work for things to get better, that changes it from, okay, you're going to go to therapy for support and tools, and a professional is going to tell you what is going to make you your best self, is going to make you thrive, and we're going to support you through that. And yes, we recognize that means we all have to make a few changes, within reason. We can only do so much, but show you're prepared to do things differently. If you expect him to do things differently, then you got to show you're prepared to do things differently, because no man likes to feel weak. It's emasculating to feel weak. And so priming it so that therapy is going to do something that helps him gain control instead of losing control, that can make him more inclined to go. It's also going to be more effective if you show that you are willing to listen to what he's been told in therapy, because a lot of people's families, when they're in therapy, are keeping them stuck. And at 19, until the family is willing to do things differently, it's not going to get much better for that young man. He's not a fully, he's still got adolescent brain. You don't become a full adult mentally until you're about 25 to 28 years old. And if there's maturity problems, well, you're dealing with somebody who's more like 16 or 17. Of course he's raging when you tell him to go to therapy. That's what boys at that age do. So, going first, being the one to go look. I'm asking you to make changes, so I recognize that if I'm asking you that, I got to do that too. So, what can I do to help you with these negative feelings? What can I do to support you? What would make this easier? Because it's got to be his idea. Forced therapy doesn't work. The person's under duress. They're not there in the mindset that's going to make it effective. Effective therapy has to come when the person wants to be there. When I screen clients, if someone is coming to me because they don't want therapy and they're claiming to have all these conditions and they don't have a diagnosis, I'm not going to help them avoid getting that diagnosis, because that diagnosis is very, very important to understanding what's going on and, what practical things, like I need to know how to calibrate what I do based on what a therapist says is actually the issue. And I like that. I like that peer-to-peer thing. I like putting the client in the driver's seat and being very client-centric and going, look, I'm just going to make some suggestions here. Let me know if any of these sound good. Because one of the things I learned with games journalism and game dev is that choice is powerful. And letting someone judge you, being open and confident in that role, like, because he probably feels very judged and very negatively judged. So if you're willing to go, what can I do differently? You're modeling the behavior you want to see from him instead of telling a much younger person who isn't fully emotional mature, you're first. It's way more effective to model what you expect from him. And that's tough when it's somebody you've raised from, like, baby, right? When it's a kid, yeah, you have to tell them what to do. But making it feel like his wants matter and his needs matter, I guarantee you, stressing that he matters and really listening to him and let him set the pace and him set the direction is gonna make him much more motivated to go to a place that's making changes. Because it's very possible that he hit a wall in therapy, that therapy was like, well, okay, for you to go further, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. And he just didn't have the power. He's 19 years old. He doesn't have complete autonomy. So that's the part that you can provide. And that doesn't mean putting up with abuse. You, again, set boundaries on false accusations and lashing out and name calling, right? You can set those boundaries. But it's gotta be two ways. You're his family, not his keeper. So love him, because people, young people, when they feel like somebody is listening to them, that's really powerful. And that's going to establish things going into adulthood. It's amazing how many men feel like, I can't express myself. No one really cares what I think. Every time I open my mouth and express how I'm feeling, it makes it worse. And that's a terrible way to go through life. And so they end up, spewing bile on the internet about video games and Doctor Who and all that stuff. And, just keep going, bad writing on the 13th Doctor. And I have no idea what they're talking about. And, I just bought the 13th Doctor DVD set a few months ago and watched it all. And I don't know. It just, they need to be able to rage at something. Because, I don't know, maybe there's a perception they're not allowed to feel anger in their day-to-day life. So it all comes out. I just finished Claire Obscura, Expedition 33. Claire Obscure, Expedition 33. And, the main male character, well, there's two main male characters, and one is sort of an embodiment of parental expectations, and the other is a very controlling father. And, guys are identifying with this dude, who is defined by wearing a whole bunch of masks. And, you get the sense that he does a lot of the very morally gray or unethical things he does because when he just comes right out and says stuff, he doesn't get heard. And, I have issues with the ending of that game, but this is a game that really benefits from people having the emotional maturity to have different takes on it. It's a game that deliberately has two endings, and it doesn't have a good ending. It doesn't have a bad ending. It has, endings that both have good, both have bad. And it's a real joy to discuss it, but it's one of those conversations where you can't need to be right because it's such a subjective interpretation. And those are conversations you can't have with the bad writing, messaging over entertainment on a show that, we just streamed on the server a Doctor Who episode where one of the writers had gotten a tax bill and he was really angry about it. And he wrote a whole episode, but it ended up being like a sort of socialist revolution in this, against this evil accountant tax man. That was the fourth Doctor back in the 1980s. So Doctor Who has always had that, like always had an element of messaging. Just because you didn't see it doesn't mean it wasn't there. I pointed out in the comments for the week that, during the 10th Doctor, David Tennant, William Shakespeare, the historical figure, took a pass at the Doctor, who, that was when the whole Doctor being bisexual thing really got started. Ten made quite a few comments. That hinted at the fact that he wasn't just into girls. And it's interesting because I always saw the Doctor as kind of asexual, but that is not how the modern Who took it. Had him sleeping with, like, what was it? Queen Elizabeth? Something like that? Elizabeth I? Something like that. But, Shakespeare flirts with them. And the Doctor just goes, and 57 academics just punch the air or punch the sky. Because, yeah, I was right. That's messaging. That was the 10th Doctor. It was season 3 or 4. It was Tennant's, I think it was Martha that was the companion with that. all the stuff with Moisturize Me with Lady Catherine, that was commentary on women who get too much plastic surgery. Adipose was about stuff like Olestra. There has always been messaging in Doctor Who. What's shifted is how challenging the message is to, certain types of viewers. And there's an empathy situation there, because I know playing Claire Obscure, I had a real issue with the fact that the only role for women remotely my age was crazy bitch who needs saving. And, did that feel like messaging? It probably wasn't intentional, but it sure felt like, ew, nobody wants those in this game, right? Because there's a lot of fucking pandering in that game. Like, everybody's beautiful, and there's a lot of pandering to like 30-something guys with a side of 40 or 50-something guys who are assholes, but they have their reasons. Perfect pandering for the video game audience, right? But then there's sort of but we want early 20s, vaguely stunted girls to play this game too, because we want their money. It really felt like right into, we want bitter dudes and romantasy fans in this. And it felt very, we want your money. And there is nothing wrong with that. But it put me off, because a lot of games are not for me. And I end up playing around that, when women have huge boobs and little tiny waists, like the anime characters, that's sending a message. When all of a sudden the huge boobs go away and it's all a very particular body type that I started calling brown hair McPonytail, that is sending a message, right? But both are sending a message, not just nerfing the boobs. And because it used to feel safe for those guys that, have their family going, well, how can I fix him? He's a problem. He has maturity problems, right? No slight to the commenter, but that is how you're coming across. Like, you're talking like your grandson is a problem instead of a person, right? You gotta recalibrate that to, how can I help my grandson be happier? How can I help him thrive? Instead of, he has maturity and mental health problems. That's a big reason why he's pushing back. That's a big reason why a lot of these guys are raging at Doctor Who. Especially the woman doctor. Jodie Whittaker's great. And I'm sorry, the Timeless Child is no dumber than the whole River Song thing. River Song landed with a thud. That ultimately went fucking nowhere. Okay? But the whole bad writing is just easy. It's safe. I never hear a single thing about why the writing is bad. And I am a writer. I wrote for television. The fact that people who have never gotten an episode written of TV in their life telling me they know more about bad writing than me, that is an emotional response. They don't recognize the pressures, the time crunch, the fact that things can, be written and then totally go to shit because of a production problem. A lot of the issues with some of the later specials on the 13th Doctor was the editing was choppy. But, there isn't enough expertise to actually judge whether specifically the writing was bad or good. Because, oh my God, that first season with Matt Smith, with 11, the acting was rough. But so were the characterizations. Amy Pond started as a terrible fucking character. Like, if you go back and watch, she was shit to Rory. Shit. She was just fucking abusive. She spent the whole time those early bits trying to cheat on him with the doctor. I never wanted Amy and Rory to get together. And, I'm watching Broadchurch right now, and it's like, yeah, he got away from Amy and became a priest because Arthur Darvill is in Broadchurch. So is David Tennant, so is Jodie Whittaker. Great freaking show. Heavy. Such a well done show. And Chris Chibnall did that. Chris Chibnall is a good writer. He's a good writer. He's an excellent writer. Russell T Davies is an excellent writer. Stephen Moffat has 4 scripts. He just recycles 4 concepts every single time and cannot fucking write a female character to save his fucking life, and he gets pissed off when people tell him that. And it's fine if you like the Moffat stuff, right? Things don't have to be perfect. I mean, is Claire Obscure a perfect game? No, it has very rough patches. Does it have gorgeous music, incredible monster designs? Did it do something interesting? Absolutely. And Eskie and Minoko, fantastic characters. Some of the other characters, less so. Mael, I think the only reason she wasn't the playable character is that she's a fucking Mary Sue. And I very rarely say that. But does that mean the whole game sucks? Just because I called Verso Geralt of Rhysand because he's Geralt of Rivia mixed with Rhysand from A Court of Thorn and Roses? No, that doesn't make it a bad game. Everything has good and bad things. And I wish that guys would stop being less critical. Stop being so critical. Stop being less critical. Be less critical of yourself. Stop beating yourself up so damn much, so that you can realize how irrationally negative you are being about things like media because it's a safe way to vent your spleen. I mean, there's no way you can say the Lupari in the 13th Doctor run is messaging over entertainment. They're space dog men. All the Centaurans. Oh my god, I love the Centaurans so much. Like, just because something hurts your feelings, just because something makes you feel rejected, like Claire Obscure made me feel rejected, and I had to push through that, doesn't mean it's bad writing. It just means it might not necessarily have been for you. And that's okay, right? Like, you can still enjoy things where you are not the target demographic. It would just be nice if there was more stuff for different target demographics. And that's the thing. If you want stuff made for you, you have to feel prepared to share. So you have to do what I do with pretty much every fucking game I pick up. There's 2 games ever that I feel like they were made for me, okay? The Alan Wake franchise, which I know is bizarre. Sorry, 3. Alan Wake, God of War, and I know it wasn't the target demo for God of War, but they based it in Greek myth, so it felt more universal. And Death Stranding. That's it. Everything else screamed at me, we don't want you. We don't care about you. I played them anyway. I found things to enjoy about them. And these people saying, it's all messaging now. It's just because that soothe you got, that other people didn't, isn't there anymore because other people are getting a turn to be soothed. Yeah, it takes some resilience to play something that seems to think you're unwanted and disgusting or crazy or useless. And trust me, depictions of 40-year-old women in video games, bless Win from Dragon Age Origins, right? Hey, Isabella was allowed to age. And people hate Isabella now. Now Isabella's woke, even though she's wearing a goddamn bikini the whole game in Veilguard. If you're getting very, very upset to the point that you have to fling vitriol on the internet, something is wrong, and not wrong with you. Something is wrong with your life. There's changes that need to be made, because somebody should be able to like something that you don't like without you announcing that it's bad. Like, that is an asshole move. And the fact that you don't realize that speaks to an incredibly deep misery and maybe even a pent-up rage. And that is not me saying you're a bad person or it's your fault. I'm saying you deserve better. And it's really disturbing to see the venom that is flung at people who work very hard. I mean, people saying that Nishutigawa was antagonistic to the fans of Doctor Who. And I said, what are you talking about? And the guy said, well, he told people to touch grass. This is what he's talking about, guys. It's okay to not like it, but the upset should be at a 4 and it's at a 15. That's what he's talking about. Gay people exist. Black people exist. Sometimes gay black people exist, you know? And if you don't like it, that's cool. But that 15 Doctor run, that was some of the best one-shots on Doctor Who in a long time. 73 yards, Dot and Bubble, Lux. Yeah, I don't know how you say Space Babies is messaging. I'm like, okay, yeah, Dot and Bubble was making a commentary about like social media cliques and how racist they are. But, you know, there were certain episodes that were just joyous. You know, the Beatles throwback. There wasn't, you think that there's messaging because Jinx Monsoon played the god of music, whatever. But pantomime has been part of, you know, British theater for ages. Was it messaging when Monty Python dressed up like women? Life of Brian. What have you been telling them? Right? Was that messaging? It was a guy dressed up like a woman. Part of it is your perception, and part of it is just feeling like you don't have a place where you belong. Trust me. Trust me. I was there. You deserve better. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Bobby Calloway is going to have a big workout. Big, long workout on this one. This is a long one. But thanks for watching and have a great weekend.